2019 at 7:30 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber. The prayer will be offered by City Clerk Patricia Pietzu, and Alderman-at-Large Brandon Laws will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman Gidge.
Present.
Alderman Harriet Gathright. Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderman Laws.
Here.
Alderman Lopez.
Here.
Alderman Karen.
Here.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderwoman Malizi Gola. Alderman Tenza.
Present.
Alderman Schmidt.
Here.
Alderman Clemmons.
Here.
Alderman Wilshire.
Here.
We have 13 members present.
Alderman Gathright is on vacation, and Alderwoman Malizi Golia is upstairs at planning. Also in attendance this evening is Mayor James Donchis and Corporation Counsel Stephen A. Bolton. We're going to go out of order, and we're going to take up the recognition period. Mayor?
Thank you, Madam President. We tonight wanted to, and I'm going to get up and read the proclamation that's on behalf of the city and the Board of Aldermen, the mayor. We wanted tonight to recognize, of course, Chief Lavoie for all of his years of service to the city. He was a great chief. He reached out to the community in a way that the police department maybe has not done before, and established a wonderful precedent for Chief Carignan and the others that will follow. He's not an egotistical man. He's not looking for recognition. He has always represented the city and the department with great dignity, with great professionalism, and so we wanted to recognize him. There was a retirement party. I could not be there because of a vacation. President Wilshire was going to represent me, but she could not do so because she was sick, so we wanted to invite Chief Lavoie in to accept our official appreciation and present him with the proclamation. So I'd ask Chief Lavoie to come up and
Absolutely.
Really, someone who's worked with Chief Lavoie for a number of years now, and I consider him a great professional and really a friend. And just with regret, of course, he's leaving. The department is in good hands, but we will miss him. So, whereas Chief Andrew Lavoie dedicated 32 years of his life to the National Police Department, following his military service in the U.S. Navy, his passion for the national community and for helping others led him through the ranks to become the National's Chief of Police in 2015. And whereas Chief Lavoie commanded many specialty units, including crisis negotiation, crime scene, traffic enforcement, and the media relations unit, as well as the New Hampshire Anti-Terrorism Task Force, for his bravery and courage, he received 2 commendation bars. One for life-saving, for performing CPR on an infant who wasn't breathing, and another for distinguished unit action for leading several National Police officers in locating, pursuing, and capturing 2 armed home invasion suspects intent on murdering a Nashville resident over a drug debt. In 2001, Chief Lavoie was named National Police Officer of the Year. And whereas Chief Lavoie serves on the Board of Directors for Bridges Domestic Violence and Sexual Violence Support, and is an active supporter of National PAL and MBK, Chief Lavoie was a member of the former National Exchange Club, was a former member of the National Exchange, or a member of the former club. He was active in the group, working at the annual ski swap and helped to distribute American flags at the Memorial Day Parade. He was a founding member of the National Community Conversation on Race and Justice, and also held quarterly meetings with Nashua's Neighborhood Crime Watch League. Now therefore, I, Jim Donchis, Mayor, and the Board of Aldermen of the City of Nashua, do hereby recognize Chief Andrew Lavoie for always being there when Nashua needed him. Our city, our police department, and our citizens are forever grateful to him. And we invite all residents to thank Chief Lavoie for his service and dedication to the Nashua community and wish him a happy retirement. Which the commission suggested we should do, which was a good idea. All the commissioners are here, of course. And so we present you with this as well in memory of your years of service.
Thank you very much.
You want to say anything?
Thank you, everyone. You know, the honor of my life. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Mayor, do you wish to address the board?
Thank you, Madam President. The answer is yes. A few things I want to discuss tonight. First, another appointment issue. I have appointed Sue Lovering, currently the Assistant Executive to the Board of Aldermen, as City Clerk. City Clerk Pietsu has done a great job for the city with the elections and elsewhere for quite a few years now. She resigned effective September 17th. I accepted her resignation with regret, but she is going on to work in charge of the state elections for Secretary of State Gardner, so obviously that's a great position for her, and although with regret, I couldn't argue with the decision to move to the Secretary of State's office. Sue Lovering is someone who knows the city very, very well, knows all of us, knows city procedures, has worked here for many years, previously in the legal department before the Board of Aldermen. She's very good with the public, and I'm very confident that in the intervening time between now and September 17th, Ms. Lovering will learn even more about election procedure. I think she's taken a course in this week or next week, something like that. And so the reason I appointed her early was to make it clear at least who my choice is, subject to confirmation by the Board of Aldermen, but also to give her time to get more up to speed regarding any parts of the job she's not familiar with yet. And so I present her to you as my nominee for the city clerk's position, and hope you will confirm her, because I am confident that over the next period of time, Ms. Lovering will do a great job for the citizens of Nashua. I did want to mention, Madam President, a couple of the resolutions that are before us. One will require a bit of discussion, that being R19-159, which is calling for the funding of the full measure and list that we would conduct over the next several years. Now, the city has not done a full measure and list. Means we make an effort to go out and see every property. The last time a full measure and list was done in Nashua was in 1991, which was actually when I was mayor before. And over the last 30 or 28 years, the city has not done a full measure and list. This is unusual. Manchester, for example, did a full measure and list in 2006, 2011, both. There's a New Hampshire NHAAO, which is a board that of assessors that makes recommendations regarding best practices. They say that a city should not that a city should do a full measure and list
every 9 years at a minimum. And so these 28 years have gone by. And Steve Bolton, the city attorney, can fill you in on more of the details, but at this point, as a result of the events which have transpired, both the Department of Revenue Administration, or the so-called DRA, and the Board of Tax and Land Appeals have expressed the very strong desire that we undertake a full measure and list, and cite the fact that there's been almost 30 years since we did it. Now, a year and a half ago or more, when we were discussing the revaluation with the DRA, were they as interested as they are now in the full measure and list? No. I mean, their position at that point seemed to be, well, we'd prefer it, but it's kind of up to you. But there has been a campaign ongoing for, what, a year now, claiming, I'm without basis, but claiming that the national records are full of inaccuracies and there are all kinds of inequities and problems. That campaign has been conducted here, before the DRA, in Concord, multiple complaints. And as a result of that, both the level of priority for both agencies, at least in our perception, has their priority regarding this has been raised considerably. And now they are very interested in that we proceed. Now, certainly there's a legal argument that they could maybe not order us to do this, but that's a legal debate. And in addition to that, there are many things they can order us to do, many of them unpleasant. So I think the approach we need to take is to work with, cooperate, and attempt to maintain a strong working relationship with the agencies that regulate our assessments, those being the Department of Revenue Administration and the Board of Land and Tax Appeals. And in order to reestablish or establish their confidence in the Nashua operation and the information we have in our property files, the way to do that is to comply with their desire and to proceed after 28 years with a full measure and list. Now, if Nashua Citizen genuinely believes that there are issues that need to be corrected within the Nashua property records, the only way to really address that in a comprehensive way is to undertake a full measure and list. And if you actually believe that there are errors and that these are fairly widespread, now these are beliefs that I do not hold after reviewing many property files and looking at many different accusations and complaints and the like. But if you really believe that, then the way to find out and to make corrections is to undertake the full measure and list, and to maintain the confidence of our agencies at this point, who have heard over and over and over about all of the problems. None of that has been verified by them. The DRA has not been here in a long time. Current examiner for us has never even visited the office downstairs. So they have no independent knowledge beyond what they've done before, which always verified the accuracy of the national records, showing us to be in good standing. Now, I've seen these letters that make various statements which are, again, not accurate. This idea that we would get only a 15% or even a 5 or 10% entry rate, there's no basis for that opinion. And KRT, that is not their opinion. For example, it's stated here that some assessors at the recent BTLA hearing think that there's a 10% entry rate. Well, one of the assessors up there, probably the most senior one, was Mr. Gagney from Manchester. In 2006, Manchester did a full measure and list in which they made vigorous efforts to reach out and contact people. they got over a 60, that's 60, not 60% entry rate. Now, they did follow-up calls and things like that, but that's what they achieved in 2006. In 2011, they undertook to do one again. This time they did not undertake as much of an outreach. After all, they just did one 5 years before, but they got somewhere between 25 and 30% entry. Recently, KRT, who we used for the assessment that we did in 2018, did Saco, Maine, 55%. They did Longmeadow, Mass, it was over 40%. And they did Brunswick, Maine, over 60%. Now, these high 50, 60% ranges, I don't think we probably are going to achieve here, but Manchester did. And if we want to put the money into making sure that we get into as many houses as we can with the kind of follow-up effort that was made in Manchester in 2006, maybe we can achieve the same 60% that they did. But this idea that we should defy the regulators, that we should fight, that we should obstruct the effort of the state to find out what's the situation, with the rationale that we're only at a 5 or 10% entry rate, is a foolish way to proceed, in my opinion. Also, these statements are made that we should go out and get bids before we authorize any money. That is against city purchasing regulations adopted by the Board of Aldermen. That's a very bad practice. I mean, we never put out an RFP or a bid proposal for bids unless we have the appropriation. Otherwise, people don't know that we're serious. So our own regulations require that we have money appropriated before we solicit bids. Now, where does this estimate come from? Yes, it's a KRT estimate, but we have not gotten an actual quote regarding how much it would cost since 1991 because we haven't gone out to bid. And so if we put out 1.3 and the number comes in lower, fine. We don't spend as much. If we get a higher number, then we consider appropriating more money. And given what's occurred and I guess the desirability of getting into as many houses as we can, maybe we should spend a little more money and make the same kind of effort that Manchester did when they received 60% entry. Steve, I'm going to ask him to fill you in a little bit more on his interactions with the BTLA and the DRA from the legal perspective. I think he can give you more detail than I have. But I think we would be putting the city in a bad position if we just defy and just say we're not going to do this, we don't really care what you think, make us. Because probably in very short order, we will get an order that we do it. And when we get an order, it could cost more money than it will if we just proceed on our own, the full measure and list being in our control, not in the DRA or the BTLA's control. The other thing I wanted to mention, Madam President, is our 19148. I think there has been some misunderstanding regarding this. This would authorize the sale that has been recommended by the Infrastructure Committee as well as the city's Business and Industrial Development Authority. There's a long history to this. There's a development agreement that goes back 10 years or so or more. This does not allocate the funds, though. That's what I'm getting at. It does not allocate the funds. These funds come in as revenue. This Board of Aldermen can and should consider how to appropriate these funds over the course of the remainder of the fiscal year. There's nothing that prevents, once this passes, the Board of Aldermen from deciding how the money should be used. And there are those who think it should be rededicated to the neighborhood, others maybe to recreation, maybe both, but there's various arguments that could be made. People may have different opinions, but those are things that can be discussed in detail when a proposal is made as to exactly how to allocate this money. But again, my point in speaking on this is that this merely authorizes the transaction, and if you read it, it's very clear. I mean, speaks not at all to any allocation. There has been a recommendation from the planning board, but that's their thoughts, their recommendation. You are not bound in enacting this thing. You do not enact their recommendation, and their recommendation is not referred to. So I just wanted to be clear about that. Now, if Madam President will allow, I would ask Attorney Bolton to follow up with respect to the BTLA, the DRA, and what has transpired with them from his perspective as the city's attorney.
Alderman Bolton. I'm
Thank-
sorry, Attorney Bolton.
Thank you.
You bet.
For reasons that are not entirely clear, back in June, the Board of Tax and Land Appeals, which I should tell you, the Board of Tax and Land Appeals typically hears specific cases when a taxpayer believes they have been disproportionately highly assessed compared to other properties in the community, and the BTLA, as it's called, sits in judgment of that case. The taxpayer has the burden of proof. I or someone else in my office would represent the city, and we would have a hearing on the particular property at issue and what it's worth. They do a similar thing when property is taken by eminent domain, but in that case, the position's reversed a little bit. We tend to argue for a lower value and the property owner for a higher value. In the case of tax appeals, we're arguing for the higher value and they are arguing for the lower value. That's generally what the BTLA does. As I said, for reasons not entirely clear to us, in June they decided to open a docket to explore whether Nashua was doing things correctly within the assessing department, whether there was failings that led to inequities and disproportionalities within the department. So we had that hearing a week ago today. I should say that by every statistical measure that the International Association of Assessing Officials has and standards they have set, we meet them all. Those same standards have been adopted by the New Hampshire Assessing Standards Board. We meet them all. Over the last 15 years, at 5-year intervals, the New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration, in their municipal and property division, does a study of our and all the other municipalities, does a study on our assessment records, gets a statistically significant number of samples, and checks those records for accuracy. If one card fails, we still meet the standard. If 2 cards fail, we flunk. We have never failed. Never. In between those 5-year intervals, there's a much less strenuous review. We've not failed those as far as our property records are concerned. 10 years ago, there was an issue whether the former assessor had filed a complete compliance report following the revaluation that employee did. Again, no problem with the information as to individual pieces of property. Now, we explained all this. We had the assessor from Manchester, not at our instance, not as any favor to us, completely on his own, the assessor from Manchester, who's highly qualified. He's a member of the Assessing Standards Board. He's a previous employee of the Department of Revenue Administration. He spoke and said, if a municipality meets all the standards, which Nashua does, I'm very worried, both as the chief assessor in Manchester and a member of the Assessing Standards Board, what are you using for criteria? And if you can do that to them, I should be worried that you're going to do it to my community next. So we're hopeful as to how this exploration will come out. But I did let them know that Nashua was considering and basically had plans to do a full measuring list for tax year 2022. And frankly, this is something I've recommended for approximately 2 years now. So the suggestion that this is a knee-jerk reaction to some of the criticism that that department has been subjected to over the last 10 months is inaccurate. As the mayor said before, 30 years is a long time without undertaking the full measuring list process. It's called the full measuring list because there is in fact measurements done to confirm the square footage. Listing refers to listing the attributes of a particular property. In residential properties, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, square footage of the home, you know, does it have special amenities, special features, tennis courts, basketball courts, whatever else might be, central air conditioning, that sort of thing. So if we do not undertake this, I think we're going to see some pushback from the Department of Revenue Administration, who will encourage the Board of Tax and Land Appeals to order us to do this. Now, I think there's some wiggle room in the law as to whether we could fight that. I don't recommend that we do. It's something we ought to do anyway, but we ought to do it of our own volition rather than wait till we're ordered. And a primary reason for that is it will be more strenuous. We won't just be ordered to do it. They will want to monitor it every step of the way. They will want to add requirements, perhaps, that are not ordinarily required. These things have every likelihood of costing us more money, delaying, and delay costs money as well. I happen to think that we have a good set of data currently, but you always run into the, well, when's the last time you did a full measuring list? And by the time this comes around, if we go forward with it and do it for 2022, we'll be 31 years old. If we don't do it, the number will get higher and higher. People start looking at you with a little more skepticism. You know, and if I go in and I've got the Pheasant Lane Mall appealing or something, I'd like to be able to say, we're as accurate as we can be, and we just did a full measuring list within the last few years. And I think in the long run, the expenditure will be well worth it. And it's not spend 1.3 million or spend nothing. By 2023, at a minimum, we have to do a statistical evaluation. That's going to cost more than half that 1.3 by itself. So you might as well do it right every few decades than put it off any longer. So I'm with the mayor on this, and I'm certainly going to be here all evening, so any questions, feel free.
Thank you, Attorney Bolton. Does that conclude your remarks, Mayor? Responses to the remarks of the mayor? I'll start on this side. Alderman Dowd.
Yes, I just want to congratulate the city clerk, Trish Pietzu, for her new appointment up at the state. I know she'll do a great job up there, and congratulations. And for Miss Lovering, even though we're going to miss her severely, she won't be that far away. And congratulations on your pending appointment.
Alderman Clay.
Yes, I'd like to echo Alderman Dowd's sentiments, and as a state rep, I'm glad to see Ms. Piatsu coming up to the State House and working, and I know she's been doing a lot of work on our behalf, going to a lot of different conferences and truly working your tail off, and I'm grateful that you're going to be the one up there working on this project. And we are going to miss Ms. Lovering. But I know where she lives. She's in my ward, so and we'll know where she works. So, congratulations, both of you.
Just for the record, I'd like to note that Alderwoman Melisi Golia arrived at 7:50 p.m. Okay. Reading minutes of previous meetings and public hearings. There being no objection, I'll declare the minutes of the Board of Aldermen meetings of July 9th, 2019, July 22nd, 2019, August 6th, 2019, and the public hearing conducted by the Planning and Economic Development Committee on July 16th, 2019 be accepted, placed on file, and the reading suspended. Communications require only procedural actions and written reports from liaisons.
Communication from J. Bradford Westgate Esquire relative to the acceptance of Legacy Drive and Serenity Lane.
There being no objection, I'll accept the communication and refer it to the Committee on Infrastructure.
Communication from Tim Cummings, Economic Development Director, relative to communication seeking a review and approval of design concept plans for the Performing Arts Center located at 201 Main Street.
There being no objection, I'll accept the communication and refer it to the Planning and Economic Development Committee. There being no objection, I'd like to suspend the rules to allow for the introduction of a communication received after the agenda was prepared.
Communication from Mary Lou Blaisdell, Chair, on behalf of the Downtown Improvement Committee relative to Ordinance 19-051, providing free library parking for up to 3 hours for Nashua students using the Nashua Public Library.
There being no objection, I'll accept the communication and refer it to the Committee on Infrastructure. Period for public comment relative to items expected to be acted upon this evening. We have 8 speakers and a 15-minute time period. So I'll call up the first person, Michael Ortolano. If you'd give your name and address for the record, please.
Michael Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I just want to provide some community input regarding the full measure and list, R19-159. Notwithstanding the mayor and Attorney Bolton's comments, the full list and measure is not currently required by the state, and it's a more economical approach to it. Attorney Bolton provided pretty extensive arguments in his testimony before the New Hampshire BTLA regarding the statistical status of the data in Nashua, and basically made a strong case that it was within acceptable standards. So the need to perform a full measure and list or to move away from full statistical revaluation are really issues that are being driven, at least in our perception, by the city, not by the DRA or the BTLA. So unless I've missed some correspondence or some dialogue on that issue, it hasn't appeared as stated. So I would prefer the city to continue its cost-effective practice of using full statistical revaluation. Second point is, in the event that's it's the desire of the city and Board of Aldermen to move forward with a full measure and list, it seems appropriate that we would want to wait for the input received from several reviews that are ongoing. One, Mr. Cornell's review of certain procedures that are being used in the Assessor's Department. Seems to me that they may affect the scope of work and the methods used for a full measure and list, and it would be appropriate before moving forward to get that input. The same could be said for the investigation that's ongoing by the New Hampshire Board of Tax and Land Appeal regarding their observations. There may be items in their situation and in their disposition of the issue that could affect the contractual elements of a full measure and list. Fourth point is basically the full measure and list is to a certain degree a matter of speculation. We've talked and heard testimony here from the mayor. Different levels have been achieved by different communities, and that's all well and good, but what we actually achieve in this city allows for a window where the benefits would vary from, potentially very strong benefits to potentially very weak benefits. And I think that is the reality of the numbers that we would actually get. Um, and and the one final point I'll make is the contractor oversight procedures. It appears that there was a significant miss in the statistical revaluation contract where the internal inspection of homes was just not performed as outlined in the contract by KRT. And it was a big scope of work, about 1,200 homes, and that's sort of thing that I think the monitoring, the contract and the contract monitoring policies and procedures probably need to be strengthened to make sure that, when the city specifies a scope of work to be done, that it's actually completed. So that's all I had for comments. Thank you.
Laurie Ortolano?
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I want to provide some clarification to a few of the mayor's comments. He mentioned that there's no validity for the 15% or 10% entry rate. The Board of Assessors meeting on March 7th of 2019, I'd ask you to refer to those meeting minutes where the chairman, Dave Hansberry, spoke that he had spoken to Rob Tozier, who felt we wouldn't get any more than 1/5 entry into our homes. And based on that, Dan did not questioned whether a 20% entry and an 80% miss was worth us doing this listed measure. So that's on the record. There's another set of minutes that I think it's documented that KRT spoke of a 15% entry rate. I couldn't find them because I was short time and I was scrolling through. But March 7, 2019 is a good set for you to look at. Also, the documentation that the mayor referred to from the BTLA and the DRA strongly suggesting that we move forward on a listed measure, I'd like to see it. I hope that's not just verbal, and I hope you all want to see it. I want to see what the DRA wrote, and I want to see what the BTLA is written. Not implied, but written, because I have not seen that, and I have been watching these correspondence closely, and I have been in communication regularly. Regarding the Bob Gagney, I had a chance to talk to Bob Gagney. Bob Gagney used to be a deputy in our assessing office. He's now the chairman of the Board of Assessors up in Manchester. He's their head guy. I spoke to him last Tuesday. I asked Bob, what do you think we'll get for entry in Nashua? He said 10%, no more. The mayor pointed out in 2006 that they had gotten a high level. That was before the laws were changed. And it was after 2011, he also pointed out 2011, the law was changed after that, that one, you don't have to allow entry, and two, even without the allowing of entry, you can still appeal if you are contesting the valuation you have. It used to be that if you didn't allow entry, back about 6 years ago, you didn't allow entry, you lost your right to appeal or abate. You had to accept the number given. The courts threw that out. So the data you're seeing that was higher in 2006 and 11 has changed dramatically. And we should be checking these facts, Mr. Mayor. Also, when you point out communities from Maine or Massachusetts, I do not know the laws in those states. And you should cite those laws, because if they're different from New Hampshire, it will make a big impact on how doors are open. So let's get our facts straight and let's all get on the same page. The validity of the $1.3 million is in question, and the mayor seemed to indicate that KRT gave us that number. I'm very concerned with that number. Let's investigate that. We had a quote years ago. Patriot was in here. It was over $2 million. Okay, how is it only 1.3 now? Also, why haven't we checked with other cities that have done more of this work, bigger cities, to find out what their numbers are? So the 1.3 million, I'm not comfortable with a KRT estimate. Entry rate, we heard what I just said. Steve Bolton told the BTLA he hopes to get into 50% of the homes. Our own board, Rob Tozier, Bob Gagney, and today I called Scott Bartlett, who is the head of the Goffstown Assessing Office and also the president of the NHAAO. And I had a talk with him. They do a cyclical review. I said to him, Scott, how many homes do you really get into? Next to none. He said, I'm looking at 800 homes this year, and we will get entry into very, very few. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll never see a house with a new kitchen or a basement finished. I'll never be invited into that kind of home. The only homes I ever get invited into are the very old ones that are dated, that the people are willing to show you, hoping their assessment goes down. I just spoke to him this afternoon. So I think these numbers that you're being sold on or told to vote on are not accurate. We're just not going to get that data. The law says we don't have to allow entry. And I wrote a statement in here that listed measure initiatives are obsolete and should not be funded in Nashua any longer. Jan wanted to know why. Because one, you're not required to give entry, and two, what we know right now definitively is 100% of the people can say no. That's it, for sure. We know they can.
Ms. Ortolano, we have 6 other speakers, and we have 6 minutes left to our public
It's an
comment
important
period.
topic, Chairwoman. And it's really important, so I'll be quick. The technical data capture is a big issue in the office. We're getting a review done. We don't have any of the information back. We have ongoing investigations. Drummond and Woodsum was hired to review mileage logs of Greg Turgis. We don't have any data on that. The board filed a motion, Steve Bolton filed a motion up at the BTLA, expanding, it appears the scope of work has been expanded into a management investigation. We don't have any information on that yet. The DRA is conducting an investigation based on the PA 71s. We don't have information on that. The city is investigating the $24 million assessment reduction made by an assessor on October 10th. We don't have any information on why $24 million was cut off the assessment records, and we should. And the BTLA just concluded a hearing and will make a ruling in the near future. The final point is the breach of contract with KRT. There is, and somebody else is going to speak to this, there is serious evidence that this contract was not followed, and the data used to generate the model was not verified. That was a very big cost for our contract, 6 figures. This city should be going after KRT to get that money back. The entry into homes, there was no addendum signed by the mayor or anyone else that authorized them not to gather the data. So that's a huge issue. Thank you.
Mike O'Connor? Name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
Yeah, Michael O'Connor, 42 Berkeley Street. And just about everything that I was going to cover has been, just a couple of very quick comments. The mayor says there's no basis for this. And I think the implication was or the investigations and the questions around this. And Attorney Bolton also said that it seemed to imply that this open docket for the BTLA was some sort of mysterious thing. It's hard to believe that the BTLA, the DRA, and others would be looking into this seriously if they didn't have some credible evidence. And I think anyone who's willing to open their eyes knows there's been a lot of credible evidence. And I think most of you, if you're fair in the board, have probably received some. The only other thing I want to mention, just because I make my living doing statistics and have for decades, the statistical significance, unfortunately, it's long recognized that something is statistically significant doesn't mean it is significant. There's a famous statistical modeler named George Box, and he said that all statistical models are wrong, but some are useful. So the question is, do you have a useful model here in Nashua? And the model itself is being what's called into question. The statistical significance that keeps getting cited here is the coefficient of dispersion. Let me just tell you very simply, without putting everyone to sleep, all it is the standard of deviation over the mean. And it is a measure of variance. It has nothing to do with accuracy, and it is the spread of the data. So when you pull the 33 cards, which I think the number is, all it says is they are within the acceptable variation.
That's not the study that's done on those cards.
Say that again?
That's not the extent of the study that's done on those
I'm not saying it is,
cards.
but that's, the mayor has cited the coefficient of dispersion. It's not the only statistic, but it is certainly in the manual that gets cited by the state, okay, if you look at that. So there are statistics, but they really need to be just not bandied about, they need to be understood. Thank you.
Laura Colquhoun.
Laura Cahoon from 30 Greenwood Drive. I just would like to say I do not believe in the full list and measure. At this point, I would like the city to invest and get some more qualified assessors. Mr. Bolton obviously hasn't gone through some of these files to realize that our assessors can't tell the difference between a plastic pool and a cement pool. And in assessment valuations, that's $20,000. And I think assessors should know the difference. And I'm looking at files and I'm finding they don't. So at this point, I don't want to waste our money on trying to get into homes, which I do not think you're going to get into, because I've always had assessors come in. I will never have an assessor come in my home again. And I've looked at a lot of people that work for the city. They have not had assessors come in to verify building permits and this and that. So why does the city think that the normal resident is going to let them in their house? I would rather you spend some money and get some qualified people downstairs and start cleaning up the records. Thank you.
Andy Prohlman.
Madam President, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, good evening. My name is Andy Prohlman, attorney with Prunier and Prohlman here in Nashua. I'm here on behalf of Renaissance at Nashua to answer any questions the board may have on Resolution 19148, the Bridge Street project. We are hopeful for your support tonight. This agreement that is before you was a long, maybe one-year negotiation with the Business and Industry Development Authority. We have the support of the Planning Board, Infrastructure Committee, and we're looking for your support tonight. And again, I'm here to answer any questions when the matter comes up. Thank you.
Stephanie Wolf Rosenblum.
Thank you so much. Stephanie Wolf Rosenblum from 47 Berkeley Street. And I'm here in support of amending NRO 93-6, empowerment of dogs, cats, ferrets, and chickens. As a physician and member of the Board of Health, I would just like to thank Representative Klee for this amendment, because it is a critical factor in keeping our residents safe that this go forward, and I would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Fred T-Boom.
Fred T-Boom, 24 Cheyenne. First of all, welcome back, Alderman Gedge. Hope you feel much better. I wish to talk about our 19159. Unlike any of you in this horseshoe except Alderman Attorney Bolton, I attended the Board of Tax and Land Appeals meeting last week. No one on that board asked for a list of measures. They did mention a list of measures, but they questioned whether that should take 3 years. They said, if you take it, you should do it in 1 year. That's what that point. And that's because things change. Things change. So why take 3 years? If you do it, it should be done in 1 year. And that's because there's great inaccuracies. There's a sticky thing called the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution that says the government cannot come into your home without due process. So a lot of people don't let you into their home. Now, who doesn't let you into the home? The very people that don't apply for permits. The very people that make changes to the home inside that no one can see. An assessor is not allowed to come on the lawn. They're not allowed to look even in the back. They can do some overflights. But the people that violate the code enforcement laws are not going to allow you into their homes. So the whole list of measures is phony. Not demanded by the Board of Tax and Land Appeal, and the stuff that Attorney Bolton said about presumptive measures, proactive measures, doesn't apply. The Board of Tax and Land Appeals will come out with their decision, and they may make whatever they decide to do in order, whatever Nash has to do, Nashua has to run a full revaluation in the year 2022, every 5 years. There's a lot of problems in Nashua. The Department of Revenue Administration brought a stack of paper this tall that Alderman Bolton, Attorney Bolton hasn't seen. Had to call a recess to review the documentation. It looks like there were a lot of complaints against the city, probably the way Angela Marino ran the office, with its neighborhood by neighborhood assessments. Probably a lot of problems with that. Hundreds, if not over 1,000 errors were pointed out by Mrs. Ortolano in a thick report that she discussed before the Board of Tax and Land Appeal in about an hour and a half of discussion. Hour and a half of presentation that will be taken on advisement by the Board of Tax and Land Appeals. And whatever they decide, Nashua will have to follow. This 1.3 million you're spending is a complete waste. It accomplishes nothing. Alderman Clemens nailed it. What does it do? It establishes a fairer system. The Budget Committee meeting, Alderman Dowd said it's going to prevent a fairer system. Of course it's not prevent a fair system. People don't let you into their homes. It's not going to be a fair system. You have to do a statistical evaluation. And I believe the whole model is in question. But I haven't looked at the statistics on the model. It takes 10 votes, the full board. I think you have missing 2 members or so it's going to take 9 members to pass this resolution. I hope you don't have 9 members to pass this resolution. Thank you.
Kim Kleiner.
Good evening, members of the board. I realize this is probably a little abnormal, but I am here tonight to represent myself and members of your assessing department, your assessors. These are your experts. These are our experts. And we would like to address some of the inaccuracies that have been stated. And I would like to start with a preface. We, the Nashua assessors, offer this response out of concern for the allegations made by Ms. Lori and Mr. Michael Ortolano, because we believe that certain documents that were sent to you on August 11th and to the Board of Assessors contain inaccuracies, misinformation, falsehoods, unsupported data, and gross assumptions that would otherwise negatively influence this honorable Board of Aldermen, the Nashua taxpayers, and the general public. And I'd like to address some of these. A full measure and list is not required by the state of New Hampshire. That's what was stated. As the board already knows, the city has wanted to conduct a full measure and list for some time, since none have been conducted in almost 30 years. Although not required by law, the International Association of Assessing Officials guideline recommends a full measure and list every 9 years. This is their guideline. Also, we'd like to note that Ms. Ortolano produced a 62-page document that she produced to the Board of Tax and Land Appeals. Page 62, and I quote, "I want to emphasize that by itself, the list and measure, though needed, will not restore trust and do away with all the problems. Indeed, it may exacerbate some. Though needed," she quotes. And I have copies of this memorandum, both on the back table and for you this evening. The city should wait to move forward on the full measure and list until the results of Mr. Cornell's review are issued. That's what's been stated. The purpose of the technical audit currently conducted is only to review practices and procedures of the assessing department on behalf of city management. The scope of work does not address any recommendations for the full measure and list. That's not his scope. It's also been stated that the city should wait to move forward on the full list and measure until after the inquiry of the BTLA is closed. We'd like to tell you there is no telling what the Board of Tax and Land Appeals will order. However, it is known that if the board orders a full measure and list, it will limit the city's input and most likely be considerably more expensive. It's also been stated the benefit of a full measure and list is a matter of speculation. Not true. In fact, a full measure and list is a widely used tool that will provide the property owners of the city of Nashua with an opportunity to help ensure that the assessment records are accurate, up to date, and provide equity among all. The city should receive formal bids prior to approving the bond. I think the mayor spoke to this. It violates our city policies. Our purchasing policies state that you do approve a source of funding before you issue an RFP. It's been stated the assessing department needs to review and strengthen their contractor oversight procedures. And you've heard a little bit here tonight about a section of the contract with KRT. There was a misinterpretation of section 3.1.6 of that contract, but it does not in any way invalidate the results of the 2018 statistical update. All sales were qualified or unqualified using MLS and many other tools, which I have a list for you here this evening. The validity of $1.3 million. The $1.3 million bond that the assessing department will request is an estimated cost for the full measure and list. The BTLA questioned if the bond is sufficient, not whether the full measure and list is necessary. After we choose a contractor, if more funds are required, a formal request will come to this board. That seems to be a lot of discussion about the entry rate into properties. It's not true that you can only expect a 15% entry rate. So, across the bridge in Hudson, they are conducting a full measure and list right now. First pass through, 24%. The rates that Mayor Donchis quoted earlier were from the last 3 measure and lists that KRT presented. And we also spoke with Mr. Gagne in Manchester, got the 60% rate. And I also spoke with David Cornell, who is our expert. And at his last class that he had with assessors that he was training, he did a kind of informal survey, 20 to 35% throughout the room. So it depends what you put into it. But it's not 10 or 15 necessarily. There's been a whole, and I would like to leave, there's some copies of this out back. I'd like to give this memo to the board. I'd like to stress that your assessing department is here this evening in the back of this room. This is important to us. It's not very often that you find that they all come to a meeting. We are asking you to vote for the full measure and list. Your city department is asking you to vote for the full measure and list. There's a lot of talk about investigations, and I would like to just get into that for 1 minute. And I realize you're close to time, Chairwoman. It's not true that the city has expanded a scope of work conducted by Drummond Woodsum to include an investigation of management. Not true. Also, during the 2018 update, it was determined that the base rate for school colleges, what we call in the assessing department Code 72, was incorrect. Correcting the table for Code 72 resulted in the bulk of the $24 million adjustment that you keep hearing about. This has been verified by KRT. It was done prior to the file capture. It was a correction. So there's no further investigation of the 24 million that you keep hearing about. Neither is there any other investigations ongoing into our technical data that's down there currently by the city. So, you know, sometimes I think you're getting a lot of misinformation. I realize it's not very often that your city staff comes out, but it's important to us. It's important to our staff to always make sure that we have accurate data. So we're asking for the board's consideration. Thank you.
Communications requiring final approval.
Communication from Mayor Jim Donchins relative to contract with Sapphire Digital for Smart Shopper.
Alderman Laws.
Move to accept the communication, placed on file and award the 3-year contract to Sapphire Digital.
You've heard the motion. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries.
Communication from Mayor Jim Donchins relative to the contract for ESRI GIS Enterprise License Agreement and ArcGIS Geo Event Server.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to accept the communication placed on file and award the 3-year contract to Environmental Services Research Institute in an amount not to exceed $28,000 per year.
You've heard the motion. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Communication from Justin Cates, Emergency Management Director, relative to the approval of Hazardous Mitigation Plan Update 2018 and Certificate of Adoption.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. I move to accept the communication, place it on file, and approve the 2018 Hazard Mitigation Plan update and authorize the mayor to sign the certificate of adoption.
You've heard the motion. Is there discussion on that motion? Alderwoman Malizi Golia.
Yes, I would just like to thank Mr. Cates and all of those who worked with him on putting this together. I know they put a lot of effort in it, and it was good to see everything that came out. So thank you.
Motion is for final passage. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries.
Communication from Lori Wilshire, President, Board of Aldermen, relative to appointments to the Animal and Dog Park Advisory Committee.
Alderman Karen.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to accept the communication, place it on file, and concur in the appointment of Alderman Lopez and Alderman Clegg to the Animal and Dog Park Advisory Committee.
You've heard the motion. Discussion on that motion. Alderman Lopez, did you have your hand up?
No. I thought it, yeah.
Can't change your mind.
Okay, you've heard the motion. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Petitions.
In accordance with the National Revised Ordinances, a petition for street acceptance for Legacy Drive and 2 petitions for street acceptance for Serenity Lane have been submitted to the board.
There being no objection, I'll accept the petitions for street acceptance as read, refer them to the Committee on Infrastructure, and schedule public hearings for Wednesday, September 25th, 2019, at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber. Nominations, appointments, and elections.
To the Honorable Board of Aldermen, I have this day appointed to the Animal and Dog Park Advisory Committee June Lemon, 18 Manchester Street, and Amber Logue, 20 Locke Street, for a term to expire September 10th, 2020. I have this day appointed to the Business, Industrial, and Development Authority the following members: Lydia Foley of 2 Bruce Street and John E. Tully of P.O. Box 600, Nashua, for terms to expire September 13th, 2020. Bradley Veer at 547 Amherst Street for a term to expire September 13th, 2020. Jason B. Haviland of 29 Todd Road, Deborah Novotny of 65 McKenna Drive, Nashua, for terms to expire September 30, 2021. To Kim Regan of 30 Temple Street, Nashua, for a term to expire May 1, 2022. David M. Dennehy of 56 Sherry Ann Avenue for a term to expire September 1, 2022. H. John Sidbeal of 48 Lutheran Drive and Carl Andrade of 12 Mountain Laurels Drive for terms to expire September 13, 2022. I have this day appointed Susan Lovering of 23 Bates Drive to the position of City Clerk for a term indefinite pleasure at the mayor for a term to begin September 17th, 2019. I have days appointed Gloria McCarthy as an alternate to the Conservation Commission of 65 Musket Drive for a term to expire December 31st, 2021. I have this day appointed to the Historic District Commissioner Ed Weber of 4 Cabernet Court for a term to expire March 31st, 2021, and Roger G. Sampson of 18 Sergeant Ave, Nashua, for a term to expire September 30th, 2022. I have this day appointed the following members of the Mines Falls Park Advisory Committee: Jeff Hannigan of 32 Hood Street, Nashua, and Paula G. Lockey of 4 Westbrook Drive, Nashua, for terms to expire August 31st, 2022, and Douglas Gagney of 1 Dumbarton Drive, Nashua, for a term to expire September 1st, 2022. And I've appointed this day John Egan to the Nashua Arts Commission of 7 Beverly Drive, Nashua, for a term to expire September 1, 2022, and respectfully request the appointments be confirmed.
Alderman Lopez.
So those were the pages out of the 146 agenda that I read. And then as I started to raise my hand, I realized I don't need to appear before a committee I'm on.
There being no objection, I'll accept the appointments by the mayor as read and refer them to the Personnel and Administrative Affairs Committee. Reports of committees. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the July 22nd, 2019 Budget Review Committee accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the July 10th, 2019 Finance Committee accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the July 31st, 2019 Special Finance Committee accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the July 24th, 2019 Committee on Infrastructure accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the July 8th, 2019 Human Affairs Committee accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the August 5th, 2019 Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the July 16th, 2019 Planning and Economic Development Committee accepted and placed on file. Confirmation of mayor's appointments.
Citizens Advisory Commission for Community Grants.
There being no objection, I'll confirm the appointment of Elizabeth Torreno, 11 Berkeley Street, Nashua, to the Citizens Advisory Commission for the Community Grants for a term to expire October 1st, 2020. Is Elizabeth here to be sworn in? Please come forward. Take the oath of office.
You raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as a member of the Citizens Advisory Commission on Community Grants, according to the best of your abilities and agreeably to the rules and regulations of the city charter and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire, so help you God?
I do.
Conservation Commission.
There being no objection, I will confirm the appointment of William S. Parker, 1 Rockland Street, Nashua, to the Conservation Commission for a term to expire December 31st, 2021. Is William Parker in the audience tonight? He will be sworn in at a later date.
Cultural Connections Committee.
There being no objection, I'll confirm the appointment of Deepa Mangalat, 18 Wild Rose Drive, Nashua, and Bernadette Mellon Plant, 41 Parish Hill Drive, Nashua, to the Cultural Connections Committee for terms to expire February 28th, 2022, and April 30th, 2022, respectively. I know that Deepa Mangalat is not here. Is Bernadette Mellon Plant here this evening to take the oath of office? She will be sworn in at a later date.
Environment and Energy Committee.
There being no objection, I'll confirm the appointment of Brandon McMahon and Colin McMahon, 1 Massasoit Road, Nashua, to the Environment and Energy Committee for terms to expire July 9th, 2020. Are Brandon and Colin here this evening? Please come forward to take the oath of office.
Raise your right hands. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as a member of the Environment and Energy Committee of the City of Nashua, according to the best of your abilities and agreeably to the rules and regulations of the city charter and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire, so help you God? Congratulations.
Historic District Commission.
There being no objection, I'll confirm the appointment of Robert Vorbach, 58 Manchester Street, Nashua, and Christopher Barrett, 44 Abbott Street, Nashua, to the Historic District Commission for terms to expire December 31st, 2020, and January 31st, 2021, respectively. Mr. Barrett is not here. He will be sworn in at a later date. Is Mr. Vorbach here this evening?
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as a member of the Historic District Committee of the City of Nashua, according to the best of your abilities and agreeably to the rules and regulations of the city charter and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire, so help you God? Thank you.
Mine Falls Park Advisory Committee.
There being no objection, I'll confirm the appointment of Pamela Anderson, 9 Plainfield Lane, Nashua, to the Mine Falls Park Advisory Committee for a term to expire March 1st, 2022. Is Pamela here this evening? Oh, she will be sworn in at a later date.
Nashua Arts Commission.
There being no objection, I'll confirm the appointment of Sarah Caesar, 3 Pine Street, Nashua, and Mark Thayer, 1 Clock Tower Place, Nashua, to the Nashua Arts Commission for terms to expire April 1st, 2022. Is Sarah or Mark here this evening? They will be sworn in at a later date.
Nashua City Planning Board.
There being no objection, I'll confirm the appointment of Robert E. Bollinger, 5 Decatur Drive, Nashua, to the Nashua City Planning Board for a term to expire March 31st, 2022. Is Mr. Bollinger here this evening? Please come forward.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as a member of the Nashua City Planning Board, according to the best of your abilities, agreeably to the rules and regulations of the city charter and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire, so help you God? Thank you.
Unfinished business resolutions.
Second reading of Resolution 19-148, amending the authorization for the sale of land on Bridge Street and Sanders Street.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion for final passage of R-19-148.
You've heard the motion. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries.
Second reading of Resolution 19-155, relative to the acceptance and appropriation of $717,156 from the State of New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services into Public Health and Community Services Grant Activity, FY 2020 and FY 2021 Regional Public Health Network Services.
You've heard the motion. Alderman Clee.
I was thinking it. So. I'd like to make a motion for final passage of R19-155.
Motion is for final passage. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries.
Second reading of Resolution 19-158, approving the cost items of a collective bargaining agreement between the Nashua Board of Education and the Nashua Association of School Administrators and Supervisors, American Federation of School Administrators, AFL-CIO, from July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, and related transfers.
Alderman Dowd.
I'd like to make a motion for final passage of R19-158.
Motion is for final passage. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Second reading of Resolution 19-159, authorizing the mayor and city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed the amount of $1,300,000 for property reevaluation services.
Alderman Clee.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for final passage for R19-159 by roll call. And may I speak to my motion, Madam President?
You may.
Thank you. I've done quite a bit of work on this particular thing, and I went back and forth. Do I vote for it? Don't I vote for it? Is it worthwhile? Isn't it worthwhile? I made calls to the DRA, and I spoke to them. My last call that I made was on Monday, and I spoke to Mr. Gary. And in that conversation, I asked him a number of questions. And one of the questions I did ask him was, I know you cannot compel us, but will you? And his exact words were, we have been strongly recommending that Nashua must do a full measure and list. I was struck by the word must. I made him repeat it over and over again, and he did. My feeling is you're right. They cannot compel us to do this full measure and list. But do I think that through other means that they will do different things? Yes, I do. And then I think the power will be taken away from this body and this city. And I don't want to see that. I don't want to see the state come in and tell us what we have to do. I want to do the right thing. And I believe that based on the claims, I believe we owe the property owners our best effort to do the most that we can do. And I think this is one of the most things that we can do. Do I believe it'll be 15%, 10%, 30%, 50%? I don't have a clue. I don't have a crystal ball. I get as many people telling me they will not let them in their houses. And unlike what some people have said, it's not just because they didn't pull a permit. We have some people that are frightened to let a stranger into their home. I spoke to one woman and told her that I would be there when they came. We would make the appointment and I would be there with her. I'm not offering that to every resident in Nashua because I do not have enough time for that. But yes, I think family members can be there. I think we can make sure that they will be safe and that there'll be IDs, and they have the right. The Fourth Amendment does give them the right to say no. No one can come into someone's property. When I talked to the DRA told me that, yes, you can look into the back of someone's property as long as you do it from the street. You can look at the outside of their home. You can do drones to fly over. There are a lot of different things that we can do. And I also agree that people who have illegally pulled a permit will not let us in their home. That's just the way the game is played. I also think there are some good people that are not going to let us in the home. I spoke to one very concerned citizen who says she just doesn't like strangers. It affects the whole feel of her home, so she doesn't let strangers in her home. This is a very good person, a very honest person. So I do not want anybody out there to feel that if for whatever reason they say no, we're going to think that they're trying to hide something. But I still believe, having said all that, we need to do this full measure and list. And when I heard strong recommendation that we must do a full measure and list, I felt that was and he said they have been recommending it for quite a while. He said Manchester does it just about every 5 years, and Concord, like Nashua, has waited decades. And he thinks that they should do it also. So we all have our own vote, but I will be voting for a full measure and list and passing the $1.3 million. Thank you.
Alderman Lopez.
I'd like to echo Alderman Clee's comments with regards to the intent of letting people in and out of your home. I know that about a month ago, I asked to have my air conditioner looked at because it wasn't working. And the guy showed up right when my cat threw up, so I was like, you gotta give me some time. So the timing could be completely benign and yet poor for somebody. So I don't want to cast any aspersions on people who might not feel comfortable letting someone in their home. I also know that particularly in Ward 4, there's like 15 million people like pretending that they're utility companies and they're not. Like they're just trying to get money or enter into some kind of deal. So I don't know that the neighborhoods I represent will be particularly receptive to a full measure and list, but I do know that some of them will. I know that I've had feedback from some people saying that, to my surprise, they were okay with their property value being raised. They were okay with their property reassessment. And to me, I would have expected everybody to automatically want the lowest possible value for their home, so they pay the least taxes. But some people are willing to pay their taxes because they feel like it's part of their community responsibility. Some people take pride in their home and the additions that they do and may want to show that the value is increasing. So I've gotten feedback on all ends of the spectrum here. I have had people who feel like we could be doing many, many better things with $1.3 million. Somebody suggested we turn the park that everybody thinks is a splash pad into a splash pad, fix the elevator. Like, I got a laundry list of better things that we could do, and it's true. There are better uses in many ways for this, but I feel like Pandora's box has been opened here. I've been hearing since I became alderman, 4 years ago, that we needed to do a full measure and list. I was not happy about having to do one last minute because the state required one in terms of a general assessment, but I do think that this is something we've known we have to do. It's not a surprise to anybody that after 28 years we do need to do one. And I think if, with what Alderman Clee and what Ms. Kleiner have understood to be the case, if we're going to end up having to pay for this other ways, I'd rather just do it right now than doing it wrong later. This is the same concerns I had when we were talking about the huge paving project. At the time, I didn't want to spend that much money on paving, and I wish we could figure out how to stagger it out or spread it out. And fast forward to 3 years later, and how many sinkholes later, I think we got on that just in time. So I'm in favor of it only because I think we need to be forward thinking. I am conscious of what the mayor said in that we're only going to be putting this out to bid, but we need to allocate money first in order to do that. I would like to see more reporting to the Board of Aldermen with regards to the bidding process. But I understand that this looks like it's something that does need to be done. And then finally, I would like to just acknowledge the assessing department. It can't be easy being under all the scrutiny, having the Telegraph showing up to interview everybody, having people following staff members around, having the constant political scrutiny that office has been under. I appreciate the job you guys are doing, and I appreciate the duress that you're doing it under. And I don't think the full measure and list is necessarily an indictment of anything that you've been doing. I think it's a long overdue process, and I appreciate your support for it.
Anyone else? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Yay.
Alderman Gidge.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Karen. Alderwoman Kelly. Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderwoman Malizi Gola.
Yes.
Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
No.
Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
We have 13 yeas and 1 nay.
And that motion carries. Unfinished business ordinances.
Second reading of ordinance 19-046, amending the zoning map by rezoning 610 Amherst Street from Park Industrial PI to General Business GB.
Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, step one, I'd like to make a motion to amend 019-146 in its entirety by replacing it with the proposed amendments made by the Planning and Economic Development Committee, and I'd like to speak to the amendment.
Alderman Dowd.
The amendment basically was adjusting it so that the line involved goes out to the center of Amherst Street because they don't like to leave an arbitrary line on the border. The planning department wanted to go out to the middle of the street, so that's basically the amendment.
Heard the motion. All those in, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Alderman Dowd.
Yes, like to make a motion for final passage of 019-1046 as amended and speak to it.
Certainly, Alderman Dowd.
This is a lot on the front of Amherst Street that had always been used for general business. It was operating under a variance as Chili's. From the time Chili's closed till the time the new owners applied for a restaurant, the time had elapsed, so the variance went away. So we have been working with Director Marchand to change a lot of the zoning on Amherst Street to reflect that the first 200 feet are general business, as 99% of them are. And the only other question is, if you're wondering why we didn't do the lot next door, it's because we didn't want to impose that on them and they didn't ask, so we're just doing that one lot.
Motion by Alderman Dowd is for final passage of ordinance 1946 as amended. Further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries.
Second reading of ordinance 19-048, authorizing a stop sign on Cotton Road at its intersection with Cotton Road Connector.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for final passage of 019-048, and I'd like to speak to it.
Alderman Dowd.
I have extra copies, but if anybody wants to know where the stop sign's going, there's a new restaurant there, the Press Cafe. People come out of the parking lot and zip onto the street, and people try to defy physics by occupying the same space at the same time. So the Board of Public Works asked us to pass this to put a stop sign there.
You've heard the motion. Is there further discussion? Alderman O'Brien.
Just follow up what Alderman Dowd said. It did go to the Committee of Infrastructure, which handles the laws of physics quite well. So.
Motion is for final passage of ordinance 19048. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. New business resolutions.
First reading of Resolution 19-160 relative to the acceptance and appropriation of $27,000 from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation into Public Health and Community Services Grant Activity FY20 Substance Misuse Prevention.
Additional sponsors? Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Dowd, Alderman Clee, Alderman Laws, Alderman Lopez, Alderwoman Kelly, Alderwoman Malizia-Goya, Alderman Tenza, Alderman Schmidt, and myself. I'm already there. Okay. Given its first reading, I'll assign this to the Human Affairs Committee.
First reading of Resolution 19-161, establishing polling times for the municipal general election on November 5, 2019, and issuing precepts to the selectmen of the city wards.
There being no objection, I'll suspend the rules to allow for a second reading of R19-161. Oh, additional sponsors, I'm sorry. Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Gidge, Alderman Dowd, Alderman Clay, Alderman Laws, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Karen, Alderwoman Kelly, Alderwoman Malizia-Goya, Alderman Clemens, and myself.
Second reading of Resolution 19-161, establishing polling times for the municipal general election on November 5, 2019, and issuing precepts to the selectmen of the city wards.
Alderman Karen.
I'd like to make a motion for final passage of R-19-161.
Motion is for final passage. Any discussion on that motion? Alderman Clemens.
The next resolution on here is a referendum, so I'm wondering this won't prohibit that from being added to the ballot, will it?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, motion is for final passage of R19-161. Further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
First reading of Resolution 19-162, relative to a ballot referendum to allow sports betting within the city of Nashua.
Additional sponsors. Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Gidge, Alderman Laws, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Tenza. Given its first reading, I will assign that to the Personnel and Administrative Affairs Committee.
First reading of Resolution 19-163 relative to the supplemental appropriation of $1,500,000 of FY 2019 unanticipated revenue from Department Number 126, Financial Services, Accounting Classification Number 45, Miscellaneous Revenue, into Fund Number 7026, Capital Reserve, Equipment Reserve Fund.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Gidge, Alderman Dowd, Alderman Clee, Alderman Karen, Alderwoman Melisi Goya. Given its first reading, I will assign that to the Budget Review Committee.
First reading of Resolution 19-164 relative to the supplemental appropriation of $1 million of FY 2019 unanticipated revenue from Department Number 126, Financial Services, Accounting Classification Number 42, Licensing and Permits Revenue into Fund Number 6600, Benefits Self-Insurance Fund.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Karen, Alderwoman Melisi Goya. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Budget Review Committee.
First reading of Resolution 19-165 relative to the appropriation of $2 million of FY 2020 assigned fund balance into Fund Number 6600, Benefits Self-Insurance Fund.
Additional sponsors, Alderman Gidge, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Karen. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Budget Review Committee.
First reading of Resolution 19-166 relative to the acceptance and appropriation of $110,000 from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation into Parks and Recreation Grant Activity, Jeff Moran Fund, Playground Improvements at Roby Park.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Gidge, Alderman Dowd, Alderman Clee, Alderman Laws, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Karen, Alderman Tenza, Alderman Schmidt, and myself. Given its first reading, I will assign that to the Human Affairs Committee.
First reading of Resolution 19-167 relative to the supplemental appropriation of $1 million of FY 2019 unanticipated revenue from Department Number 191, School, Accounting Classification Number 43, Intergovernmental Revenue into School Capital Project Activity, District-wide Middle School Renovations.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Gidge, Alderman Dowd, Alderman Clee, Alderman Lopez, Alderwoman Kelly, Alderwoman Melisi Goya, Alderman Schmidt, and myself. Given its first reading, I will assign that to the Budget Review Committee and the Capital Improvements Committee.
First reading of Resolution 19-168 relative to the supplemental appropriation of $300,000 of FY 2019 unanticipated revenue from Department Number 126, Financial Services, Accounting Classification Number 42, Licenses and Permits Revenue into Capital Project Activity, 14 Court Street, Courtyard Improvements.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Gidge, Alderman Dowd, Alderman Clee, Alderman Laws, Alderman Lopez, Alderwoman Kelly, Alderwoman Melisi Goya, Alderman Tenza, Alderman Schmidt, and myself. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Budget Review Committee and the Capital Improvements Committee.
First reading of Resolution 19-169 relative to the supplemental appropriation of $700,000 of FY 2019 unanticipated revenue from Department Number 126, Financial Services, Accounting Classification Number 42, Licenses and Permits Revenue into Public Works Capital Project Activity, Infrastructure Improvements Citywide.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Gidge, Alderman Dowd, Alderman Clee, Alderman Laws, Alderman Lopez, Alderwoman Melisi Goya. Given its first reading, that will be assigned to the Budget Review Committee and the Capital Improvements Committee.
First reading of Resolution 19-170 relative to the reappropriation of fiscal year FY 2020 escrows.
Additional sponsors, Alderman Dowd. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Budget Review Committee.
First reading of Resolution 19-171, approving an amendment to the lease with Nashua Ice Center, known as Conway Arena.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Gidge, Alderman Clee, Alderman Laws, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Karen, Alderwoman Kelly, Alderwoman Melisi Goya, Alderman Tenza, Alderman Schmidt, Alderman Clemmons, and that's it. Given its first reading, I'll assign it to the Finance Committee.
First reading of Resolution 19-172, authorizing the mayor to enter into a power purchase agreement, PPA, and lease with Revision Energy.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Gidge, Alderman Clee, Alderman Laws, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Karen, Alderwoman Kelly, Alderwoman Malisi Goya, Alderman Tenza, Alderman Schmidt, and Alderman Clemmons. Given its first reading, I will assign that to the Finance Committee. New business ordinances.
First reading of ordinance 19-049, authorizing free holiday parking at meters in Zone 3, which includes the Elm Street and High Street parking garages from December 9, 2019 through January 3, 2020.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Gidge, Alderman Dowd, Alderman Clee, Alderman Lopez, Alderwoman Kelly, Alderwoman Malisi Goya, Alderman Tenza, Alderman Schmidt, and myself. Given its first reading, I will assign that to the Committee on Infrastructure.
First reading of ordinance 19-050, changing the location of the parking permits for Delenas House residents.
Additional sponsors, Alderman Clee, Alderwoman Malisa Goya. Given its first reading, I will assign that to the Committee on Infrastructure.
First reading of ordinance 19-051, providing free library parking for up to 3 hours for Nashua students using the Nashua Public Library.
Additional sponsors, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Karen. You're already a sponsor.
Sorry.
Alderman Schmidt. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Committee on Infrastructure.
First reading of ordinance 19-052, amending NRO 93-6, impoundment of dogs, cats, ferrets, and chickens.
Additional sponsors, Alderman Lopez. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Personnel and Administrative Affairs Committee.
First reading of ordinance 19-053, authorizing signatures for contracts less than $1,000.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien. Okay, given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Personnel and Administrative Affairs Committee. Period for public comment. Lori Ortolano.
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. There were some things Ms. Kleiner said that were disappointing to hear. You know, for me, as a taxpayer, the quality of the assessing staff is an issue, and I don't understand why we haven't been able to conclude an investigation with an assessor who did not do his job for the month of April, did not go out and inspect properties, is a, confessed sex addict, has a number of issues, and we accept that. And that's a problem for me.
Well, the
that we
problem
still-
here is I don't think we need to be saying that about people in the city.
I'm only saying what he said. Okay?
It's not acceptable in our chamber. Thank you.
Okay, fine. That's fine for you. But you're sitting up there and I'm the taxpayer, and this is the person you have working in the office. And I noticed he came out tonight to sit with the crew. I noticed Miss Wally isn't here. She wasn't invited. I'd like to know why somebody so valued isn't here. I'd like to understand that. But it's just, that's a disappointment. I'd like to share something with you that I shared up at the BTLA. And as you know, I had a big concern with permit data and also EYB. Let's talk about EYB, effective year build. This was a big issue from the very first day. You came out in September and talked about the KRT meetings that were being set up. I think it was Mary Ann who talked about her district having concerns with EYB. The mayor spoke about it. I started focusing on effective year build as a concern, and I couldn't get anyone in the assessing office to validate it. They wouldn't speak with me, they wouldn't meet with me, they wouldn't talk to us, they rejected any attempt we had for a meeting, even though we met with neighbors, and we couldn't get any confirmation. Over the last couple of months, investigating and digging deep and looking into records, I found a set of notes that was a meeting with KRT on 10/11/18. It was about 5 days after I had a phone call with Rob Tozier about my property and EYB. And I was trying to figure out why they never came back and did an inspection. We went to the hearing on September 6th, and no one showed up. And on August 5th, I called KRT in Haverhill, and I said, why didn't you come? And that's when I learned that they were told by John Duhamel we wouldn't let them in, which was not true. But after that, he went and had a meeting with the Board of Assessors where only one board member was there. And Miss Wally was asked to take notes. And at that meeting, it said in the record, KRT discovered that the effective year build was being used to increase depreciation. This is an ineffective measure for anything that has maintenance issues or anything that is old. This issue really affects older homes. KRT found a lot of stuff that was old, 69, 84, 89, 94, and inconsistent. And they started to use the condition in conjunction with EYB. For example, a restored home is not an average condition. It is in better condition than average. About half the properties need to be reset. If one property has an effective year build adjusted and the other property next door is identical and doesn't have that adjustment, it will result in assessments that are not fair and equitable. EYB is a very subjective field. If an EYB was last updated in 1991 with the last full listed measure, that would be skewing the assessments. Rob said there are really only 3 fields that are subjective: grade, condition, and EYB. Everything else is black and white. The neighborhood codes are somewhat objective, but not tremendously. That is an interesting statement and set of minutes, because I was struggling so much to understand why this EYB was throwing me off in my neighborhood, to the point where I paid the $55 to get all the cards and put the data together to realize that most of the homes were 1955, 1960, and we were slammed up to 1995. And no one, including Dan Hansberry, who is now the chair of the board, who was sitting in this meeting, would tell me that this discussion took place, that this was a legitimate issue, that I was seeing a problem, and it affects about half the older homes. That's a big issue, and I feel like the city withheld information from me. Also, in the same meeting, Rob said there was a serious problem with implementing the income approach. The income approach was all set up, and then John recalculated, wiping out all the income information. We lost it all. Rob said this happened, quote, late in the game, so we called Patriot. They said it is probably because we were in the analysis database, and that was not stable. Rob believes that explanation was just a cop-out. Patriot was surprised that we did the entire update in the analysis database, but Rob said it should have been able to handle it. He was asked if there was going to be a problem when an abatement is filed and we need to defend the income approach, and he said it would have to be set up again on that account. He said Ken is really the person to explain how it was set up. At the meeting by the Board of Assessors on October 18th, it was Dan Hansberry who said, I'm really concerned. We've got to reinvent the wheel and create all this data all over again. And they never discussed it again. And the BTLA brought up the issue of this data. And to me, it's really questionable whether all this data got recreated. Nobody ever really looked at that, except to say, John said it was done. He lost it all, and then it's all done. We should be looking at that. I really think David Cornell should be looking at that income data to find out if the commercial properties were reestablished correctly. But this is some of the public issues with perceptions and clarity and truthfulness and trust with this department. You know, I have opened my house for 35 years. We have always let assessors in. I will never open my door again in Nashua. That ship has sailed, and I will tell anyone, don't open your door, because I've looked at a lot of data, and it pays not to open your door. And I hope all of you aldermen here, and the mayor, and the people sitting in this chamber set the example and are the first ones to open your door and let these assessors in to reevaluate your property and set the data straight. Thank you.
Ben Telersky?
Ben Telersky, 5 Shakespeare Road. I'm here to speak regarding Ordinance 19-051, which was introduced tonight. I've been working with Alderwoman Kelly to put together a small youth advisory committee. We got together a group of Nashua high school and college students to talk about things we'd like to see in Nashua. One of the recurring comments that was made was making the library more accessible to students. A lot of the time when high school kids have a group project, they'll go to Barnes & Noble on the south end when we could be getting them into to the library utilizing downtown. I'm a recent graduate of Nashua South. I know Nashua values education, and by allowing up to 20 students, what is in the ordinance, allowing up to 20 students to park for free up to 3 hours, we'd allow students to have much better access to the resources that the library has for them. I'm leaving for college in about a week and a half, but I hope you will all support the ordinance to allow students younger than me to take advantage of the resources they have in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Remarks by members of the board. I'm going to. Mr. Schaefer. Oh, I didn't have anyone else signed up. You can address the board.
Peter Schaefer, 15 East Street. I just want to make a quick comment on the future social investment in the rail yard district. Today, Nashua sold a ball field in that area, and several years ago, we lost a skate park in that area. And there's a lot of development going on. Hundreds of apartments are going into that area. And I think we're going to need some investment in services as well. We've lost services recently, and we'd like to get some of that back. You've gotten some money today, $770,000 or so, for that ball field. There are other funds available in the future. All of the apartments that are coming there, they're going to be paying taxes, so you'll get some of that. There's also going to be a tax increment area of some kind where there's money. So since the reason I'm speaking is because you're the folks that spend the money, figure out where the money you want to go. So rather than going to all these meetings all the time and telling everybody spend some money here, I want to suggest to all of you is that area needs some investment. So when things come up, think about us down in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Remarks by members of the board. I'll start on this side tonight. Alderman Tenza.
Thank you. This is our last board meeting until September. And before we meet again will be the filing period for municipal offices, which start at the end of August and go until the first week of September. Hopefully, we'll definitely have a new clerk by that time. And one of the things that people can do to help out the new clerk is to get involved, especially at the local election position. There are ward moderators, ward clerks, and selectmen who help run the polling places. There's always a need for people, good people, maybe even young people, to step up and fill those roles. It's a long day, and with a new clerk, hopefully she's gonna need a great staff behind her. So please look into that if you're inclined to do so. Get involved and help the city out in that way. Also, I think at these meetings, when we're debating and having a lively debate over everything what's going wrong with the city or perceived to be going wrong with the city, we forget about all the good stuff that's happening. So I just wanted to congratulate the mayor and Alderman Lopez about the new futsal court. Am I saying that correctly? That was installed down in Ward 4. It's great to see that space being used. It was a great project, I think, to see the community come together and make that decision. Hopefully it will be there around for a long time for kids in the downtown area to be able to use.
Alderwoman Melissa Golia.
Yes, thank you. First of all, Mr. Schaefer, to your concern, I had conversation with the mayor this evening prior to this meeting, and also with some other individuals who are involved in planning. And I share your concern about the need for resources there, especially recreational resources, as we increase the population there. So I would just like to let you know, I know there are several people sitting around this horseshoe who are also looking at what's going on there and how we can make sure some of those resources are in your community. The other thing is, Alderman Karen and I have gotten to know each other very well, both in her professional career and her retired career. This is the 15th year of Nashua Goes Back to School. And I know you're all like, oh yeah, big deal. But the other thing we all realized, and Maureen Lemieux and I talked about this a month ago, is that 15 years ago, we opened our 2 high schools, which is just amazing to think with some of the controversy and some of the concerns. And here we are. And, you know, I look at programs in the high school, especially the technology programs, and in 15 years, they've reinvented themselves and they keep moving forward to make sure what our students are getting on both campuses is relevant and preparing them for the workplace. 15 years ago, we hoped we would have 700 students attend. This year, as we have in the past probably 8 years, we planned for 1,500, and we typically have between 12 and 14. We couldn't do it without the generosity of the business community, both in their donations of goods and services, and anywhere from $9,000 to $10,000 a year, and that has stayed steady. So I think in terms of the good things, education is supported, and the school district from the very beginning, Superintendent Giuliano said, yep, every principal will be there, and they're there. And we always open our doors to the private schools if they would want to attend, and our homeschoolers are also invited. And every one of them receives a little goodie bag of school supplies. But I think we all feel as a committee that 15 years of 2 high schools is certainly something to celebrate. And I know some of us sitting around this table are going, oh my gosh, how long have we been doing this? So I would like to invite all of you to stop in on Thursday. The event goes from 5 to 6:30. Typically, people are lining up around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We have 37 agencies and programs in the city who will be participating out on the lawn. And the health department, I'm so glad to see Director Bagley here. The health department is going to be providing immunizations free of charge, but you need to have your record. So put it out on social media. The nurses have been making that available to people. So I hate to say it, but don't spend the copay to go get your child's immunizations up to date. Come see us. And we'll be doing free lead screenings also. So I hope you'll join us. And thank you to Mayor Donchis and all of the mayors in the past who have supported us by providing city services for this event. Thank you.
Alderman Jettie.
I just wanted to say that I voted for the bond for the full list and measure because we've been hearing for some time criticisms about the assessing department, but more importantly on this issue, criticisms of the data that we have. And I voted for the full list and measure because I thought that was a step in the right direction as far as getting a handle on our data and updating our data. It's been a long time since we've done it, and there are some cities, some towns and cities that do this on an ongoing basis. They do 1/5 of their homes every year to keep up to date on it. And I think I know that the issue about whether or not people have to let the assessors in or not, has come up. But I think there are other ways that these professional assessing companies can verify the accuracy of the records, and so that's why I voted for it. I think it's a step in the right direction, and hopefully hopefully it will help us in the long run.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. I wanted to start off by thanking City Clerk Pietzu. We worked very closely with her on the Pride Committee, and she was indispensable among other things that she does at the city. So you will be missed, and I know the state is gaining someone who's very competent and passionate, and I appreciate all your hard work. As a new alderman, Ms. Lovering has been indispensable to me, and I hope that we, confirm her in her new role, but I will definitely miss her. I want to quickly note about the assessing the full measure and list. I wanted to just thank everyone for the additional information given what has occurred in the last couple of weeks, and also thank the assessing department for being here in full strength and really explaining what they wanted to see come out of that. Lots of thank yous. I just wanted to thank the board for their support of the solar program. I know it's something that I personally am passionate about, but also the Energy and Environment Committee is really looking forward to see happen in our city. And the appointment of the new student members, which we've been working on for a bit, I think is really going to help us as we continue to build towards addressing the climate crisis. And then lastly, I just wanted to thank Ben for being here. As he mentioned, we did put together a group of students who were eager and interested in doing something this summer, and I worked with the mayor's office to meet with them weekly. And this was the project they came up with. I had no input on it. This was the project that they felt very strongly about. They've done a lot of research, and they're looking forward to presenting to the Infrastructure Committee, which I believe will be next week. So if you guys are able to come, they are really, really passionate group of students, and I think they've done a great job on it. So I hope to get your support on that. Thank you.
Alderman Karen.
Okay, thank you. A few things on R-19-148, went over my head. But I would hope that $700,000, that we utilize some of that for that East Hollis Street, Bridge Street area. They were supposed to provide recreation for those neighbors, and unfortunately, it didn't come to pass. And giving us the money is wonderful, but I think it's very important for that neighborhood to get some of that recreation programs that they asked for. And I know that we worked, and Mr. Schaefer and I sat on the committee concerning the traffic pattern that was going to take place for the bridge coming from Hudson to Nashua. And some of the concerns that the neighbors had was that we did not have any recreation ideas. And they did come up with some, but unfortunately, you know that money that goes for traffic doesn't necessarily go for recreation. So I think it's very important, Mayor, that Board of Public Works understands that there is a need there with the additional 200-plus apartments that are going in, that those people have a right to some passive, active recreation in that area. So I hope that you keep that in mind when you move down the line for that $700,000 cost. And I apologize for not doing that. And as far as back to school, I have been doing this longer than retired than when I was working. But my function basically is to pack the 1,500 bags. And we can't do that without volunteers. And for 15 years, RSVP, our seniors in this community have stepped up to the plate and bagged those bags in less than 3 hours. They work piecemeal. Some of them are in their 80s. So if you want to see people who work hard, who know how to do it, you come down to the library next Tuesday after 8:30 and see what they can do. And I know the mayor came last year, and I think he was quite impressed with some of them. And a lot of them have been doing it for 15 years. So it shows you that one generation will help the other moving forward. And of course, we'll all be there on Thursday, the 22nd, for the big bag handout. So thank you for that.
Alderman Lopez.
I'm just going to watch DJ Bernie catch kids playing freeze. So the first thing is I want to say is we've been talking about the need for recreational activities, and to Alderman Tensa's point, The new futsal court going in on Ash Street is across the street from the Powell Center, which on the top floor has a boxing gym where we have regularly succeeding athletes, kids that would otherwise be engaged in other activities or might be at risk, really learning to build a positive self-image and how to value themselves as athletes. We have Golden Glove winners. We have people qualifying for the Olympics. Like, we have some pretty amazing things happening at that Powell Center because of the years of investment that have gone into it. We have the skate park on the same street, and we have kids of increasing skill and dexterity in the inner city having the opportunity to practice right in their own neighborhood. And now we have a futsal court, which any professional or semi-professional soccer player will tell you, futsal helps kids develop skills much more rapidly and effectively than just casual soccer. It's a great training activity, and we can look forward to seeing some really good athletic soccer athletes coming out of those neighborhoods over the next couple of years. And in addition to athletes, that neighborhood is turning out leaders because the idea for the futsal court it came from the kids at the Powell Center. They participated in the Your Choice, Your Voice. They developed a presentation for it. They campaigned for it. They did a great job. So I think recreational facilities over in the Canal Street area are important to that area's future, that area's growth, and ultimately the investment of those families in that community. So I agree with Alderman Clemmons or Alderman Karen that we need to take that as a serious priority. I also wanted to recognize City Clerk Pietsu. She's been helping me for years before I was even alderman, try to put together cultural festivals, positive street art events, Great American Downtown events. And then as alderman, I mean, she's been of enormous help in helping me figure out what city statutes there are, what activities are going on that I should be part of. And even in this horseshoe, where she's staying with it all night while the rest of us are having the late night meetings, and we get to posture and express our opinions and do all this political stuff. Well, she's just paid to quietly work, which she does really well. So I just wanted to recognize her with one opportunity, because I thought maybe next month, just in case you're sick, let's do it now, to do your favorite thing. And I wanted to do a roll call vote on aldermen expressing their appreciation for the job she's done over the years.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alden O'Brien.
I do have one comment. Or would you?
No.
You're next. You're down river.
Yes. You want to adjourn?
No.
Oh, no.
Were you sleeping, Michael?
Making this last
Oh,
one.
yes. Oh, the roll call, excuse me. Thank you. I thought he was kidding, but yes.
So did I.
I thought he was, I have to take you more serious, I
So
apologize.
the answers are yay or nay, just a reminder.
Alderman Gidge.
Yes, Mrs. McCarthy has agreed to open the
No,
66.
This is
I'm
a
sorry.
roll call vote.
Oh,
Yes.
answers are yay
I
or
apologize.
nay.
Just say
Yes,
yes.
yes, sorry.
Alderman Dowd.
Absolutely.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderman Laws. Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly. Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderwoman Malizi Gola. Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
With my whole heart.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
Absolutely yes.
We have 14 yeas.
Okay, there you go.
That's some confusing.
Thank you.
Committee announcements.
Well,
Oh, man.
no,
They-
still
they're all
comment.
talking about it.
Oh, I still comment.
I know.
Public comments.
Alderman Laws, Alderman Clay.
Yes, I'd like to also mention about the back to school. Last year was the first year I went to it, and I primarily went to it because I was an alderman. I have no children. I have no children in the school system. But I have to tell you, walking around, it was excitement of all the kids gathering all the little stuff and putting it in their bags, and it was just a pleasure to see. They were excited about going back to school. They're excited about their little goodie bags, and I think also seeing all their friends and even some of the teachers and so on there. It was quite exciting, and I'm glad that we're going to have the immunizations and the free lead screening. I think that's a wonderful addition to this. And then I'd like to kind of address some comments that were made. And I hope that I don't embarrass Mrs. Kleiner over there, but Mrs. Kleiner, I noticed that there were 3 missing employees here. Did you send out an invitation and skip those 3? Okay, thank you. I'd just like to make sure that gets into the record. And the comment about the EOB, I believe that was addressed in the management audit. And I think that when they came and talked to us, they talked to us about that there was some subjectivity to the EOB. So I don't think we've been hiding anything or anything to that nature. And I also just want to make one other comment. The city has not done a full measuring list since 1991. Excuse me, sorry. Just having a hard time breathing with that. Since 1991. Well, my house was done in 1991, and my house was done in 1995 per my card. So mine has been up there a little bit more. So I'm done. Thank you very much.
Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, some quick things. We had a yard sale at Kessler Farms the other day, and a woman came up to me and wanted to know if I had any notebooks because she was trying to get things for her kids to go back to school. And I steered them to the back-to-school event. She was ecstatic. And I just want to thank everybody involved because I've tried to beat everyone every year, and it's an amazing event, and the kids really love it. The second thing is the bond process. Correct me if I'm wrong, Corporation Counsel. But if it comes in, the 1.3 million has now been approved, and they can go out and get bids. If it comes in over 1.3 million, it has to go back through the process. It needs a new public hearing through budget, and it would have to go back through the board again. Also, when a contract is arranged, it will have to go through finance. So there are other checks and balances on the 1.3 million. The third thing is I've been getting a lot of questions on the middle school development. We're expecting the architect's report in September. I'm not going to put an exact date on it, but in September. It got delayed a little bit because vendors are very hard to get as far as some of the things that we had to do to make sure that the property is buildable and environmental aspects of Elm Street and other things. So it's still going on, and we'll have some answers probably in September. And the fourth thing is I want to congratulate the Spartans Drum and Bugle Corps. They won the World Championship, and it's an organization that gives kids another outlet for their musical talents and gives them something to do and get them off the street. That's what they established for many years ago, and they do a phenomenal job. That's it.
Alderman Gidge.
Yes, I'm sorry if I made an error a while back, but quite excited about it. Mrs. McCarthy has agreed to open the 66th consecutive year art show at the Greeley Park. 9:45, she will ring the bell to get the festivities going. The mayor will be there. Hopefully, everybody will be there. Please buy art. 1 at least. 2, I will come over and shake your hand at your house. If you buy 3, I won't come over to shake your hands. But if you buy 4, the mayor will go to your house and sing happy birthday to you. So anyway, by the way, the art show at Greeley Park brings the second large amount of people into the city. The first is the stroll. The numbers, we're not sure of how much money it brings in, we're not sure of, but we're going to start bringing those numbers in. And I think the arts, especially in Greeley Park, is very important. And also, I think Mrs. McCarthy is going to have a good time. So please come if you can.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you. First, my apology to Alderman Lopez. I didn't know what you were doing, so I was a little bit confused there. Perhaps my motion to adjourn would have been in order, but anyways, to get back to focus, I would just like to mention briefly on R-19-148, and that's that land purpose down on Bridge Street. And I agree with some of the other aldermen that we're going to redesign this neighborhood practically from scratch. A lot of vacant land and everything else like that. And we do need recreational fields, but a field is not a field. It's what is underneath it, particularly if it had a history of a past industrial history. And you're talking about this particular field that was what I consider a brownfield. The former occupancy of that site was the former John Mansfield, which made asbestos. And if you put sports activity on that particular field, anything that's kicking the ball, you're kicking the dirt, and I don't know. Not enough information was there on that particular. But that wasn't the question that came before, the infrastructure. And I would like to thank Mr. Schaefer for bringing it up, because Mr. Schaefer is very attuned also with the rail committee, and he's been to many of those meetings and come up. So this definitely needs to be addressed, to look at other fields, I think, in the area and try to keep that recreational part alive. And that's going to be our choices. We're going to have several different choices because of this as it comes forward. The other thing I would like to say is very happy to see that Ms. Piasu has got the job with the Secretary of Gardner. I'll be seeing you up in Concord, you know. This is definitely going to be a loss to us, but I take solace in the fact that Ms. Lovering has been nominated by the mayor for the position of city clerk, so I wish you Godspeed through your nomination process. I'll let the cat out of the bag. You got my vote, kid. You know? But I wish you the best of luck. Tricia has your new job up there, and like I say, we'll be seeing you up there. And thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank the assessing department for coming out tonight. Everything they do, I appreciate. Also like to thank the committee that does the back to school, 15-year project of back to school. That's a lot of kids you serve, so thank you for investing your time there. I think it's very worthwhile and goes a long way. Committee announcements. Alderman Dowd.
Yes, next Thursday, Joint Special School Building Committee at 7 p.m. in the Nashville High School North boardroom. There won't be a lot of things presented, just a sort of a status of where they're at, but no final report yet. And I was going to mention it before, and I was remiss. As treasurer of the Bryan Memorial Foundation, we have been granted our 501c3 from the IRS, so we are a charitable organization. We're raising money for STEM students out of both high schools. So,
Other committee announcements? Alderman Lopez.
Substandard Living Commission, or Substandard Living Conditions Committee is going to be next meeting in September 12th. We will be discussing issues such as bed bugs and other exciting things.
Alderman Karen.
Thank you. Due to the fact that Labor Day is the first Monday in September, Human Affairs Committee has finally given up their September 9th so personnel can meet. Two of the most important things is Ms. Lovering's nomination as city clerk. I don't know if I want to vote for that, 'cause I don't want to lose you. And the other thing is for setting the times for elections. So we certainly want to make sure everybody's there. Thank you.
Alderwoman Malizia Golia.
EDC will be September 3rd, so the day after Labor Day, here in the chamber at 7 p.m.
Anyone else? No? Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we are adjourned at 9:43 p.m.